Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise, stack up the sources, and really extract the precise knowledge you need to grasp these immense complexities often hidden within, these really intense, pivotal moments of human experience.
And our mission today is, it's highly targeted. We are deep diving into the crucible of June 1985. The source material we have is incredible excerpts from a very focused narrative that chronicles this explosive weekend where identity, sexual awakening, and just existential panic all collide for two siblings, Robin and Ruby MacKenzie.
Yeah, we're really analyzing how a crisis can force this radical, accelerated reckoning with yourself and with your family.
It's truly a study in pressure. The whole thing takes place over a single weekend.
And it's not just any weekend, it's Father's Day weekend, which also happens to be the birthday of their deceased brother, Jackson.
The pressure is just immense.
Right.
So we're following Robin, a theater student who's waiting tables in Philadelphia, and then his younger sister, Ruby, who's a college student trying to sort of escape her social anxieties down at the Jersey Shore.
It's like a roadmap of emotional collapse and sudden reconstruction. It happens so fast.
It does. And the core mechanism of this whole narrative, really, is the contrast between things falling apart and things coming together.
Right. You have the end of these old, comfortable lies and failed relationships.
Yeah, it's set against a spontaneous, super high-risk formation of completely new, authentic connections. The emotional stakes are just off the charts. But what makes this unique is the physical peril that's just overshadowing every single decision they make in that specific year, 1985.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I think we should start with Robin. He's immediately caught in this whirlwind of professional failure and just paralyzing health anxiety, right as this massive opportunity lands in his lap.
Exactly. When we first meet Robin, his professional life is a perfect analogy for his internal state. It's chaotic, it's messy, and it feels like it's on the verge of disaster.
He's working the dinner shift at this place called Rosalind's Upscale Southern Cuisine.
And the source material just paints this picture of a young man who is completely overwhelmed. He feels like he's been miscast in his own life.
And it's not just a rough shift, right? It's a high-stakes performance that he's failing. I mean, we see him having to navigate this exact kind of high-maintenance, upwardly mobile crowd that really defined the 1980s.
Oh, completely. The power suits, professionals demanding 5 different temperatures of steak, asking for bizarre menu substitutions.
Like an egg white only omelet that isn't even on the dinner menu. It's absurd. He just feels totally invisible, reduced to just juggling all these demands.
And that feeling of being reduced is immediately reinforced by what the source calls the infamous cork incident.
Oh, yeah. He's struggling with a bottle of red wine, trying to get the cork out, and it just shoots out and lands in a bucket of ice.
And the whole table of these tipsy patrons just gives him this mocking round of applause. It's this small, deeply embarrassing failure that's enough to push him over the edge of stability.
And the very next morning, his boss, Rosalind, puts him on probation. She gives him this graphic threat, slicing her hand across her neck, and says, Blanco is out if he breaks one more thing.
And this external instability, it feeds directly into his crippling internal state. Because Robin is navigating the early AIDS crisis as a young gay man in Philadelphia, and his anxiety is just acute.
He calls the virus the big one, and the source material details his constant sort of ritualistic self-checking.
He's always poking his glands, placing his hand on his forehead, trying to find any slight warmth that he could associate with the virus, even though he had recently tested negative.
That fear, you can't overstate it in 1985.
No, you can't. And it's an anxiety that is rationalized by the reality around him. He contrasts these, robotically fit yuppies demanding their rare steaks with the men he actually knows who are getting sick and frail.
The source gives that key detail about his neighbor Donovan, a man Robin always thought of as sort of boring with a 9-to-5 job in Manhattan.
Who's now suffering from purple lesions.
That detail about Donovan is so critical because it just shatters the illusion that only men living a certain, reckless lifestyle are at risk.
The disease feels arbitrary, invisible, and terrifyingly efficient. And Robin's response to this is so telling. He starts taking the stairs to avoid confronting Donovan in the elevator.
It reveals this deep-seated psychological toll. Right? There's shame, there's denial, and this desperate need to just distance himself from the reality of the crisis.
But then life throws him this curveball of success. Amidst all the professional humiliation and the health panic, he gets confirmation.
He's been accepted to a prestigious semester abroad program in London, an apprenticeship at the National Theatre.
This should be an unadulterated triumph, a confirmation of his talent.
But even this success is immediately tainted by his core insecurity. He was only first on the waiting list.
Right. The source states he feels that lingering pinprick of embarrassment, the thought that first on the waiting list still means second best.
So he attributes it to luck, not skill. It's a recurring theme for him that he's only desired or successful because of these superficial traits, like his looks, rather than any genuine depth.
So what does he do? He calls Peter, his 28-year-old graduate student boyfriend who lives out in Pittsburgh, to share the news.
And Peter isn't exactly thrilled about visiting. Robin has to really push him to come to Philadelphia for the weekend. Peter agrees, but the whole visit is just structured purely as a termination.
The Peter breakup is just a masterclass in intellectualized cruelty. It's surgical.
7 minutes long, precisely timed at 6:32 p.m. at a Greek restaurant.
And Peter, who is a student of great gay artists, frames his life in these academic terms as an examined way of living. He reduces their entire 8-month relationship to a quick footnote in his personal narrative.
He weaponizes philosophy against Robin. His main accusation is that Robin's behavior is unexamined.
He's positioning himself on this moral, intellectual high ground, suggesting that his decision is purely rational and that Robin lacks the self-awareness required for a serious relationship.
But the source material is so quick to expose the deep hypocrisy that's just underpinning this whole intellectual veneer.
It is. Robin demands to know the real reason, and Peter's high-minded rationale just crumbles instantly into base panic.
It's starkly clear. Peter is absolutely paralyzed by the fear of AIDS.
He cites Robin's extensive sexual history since he was 13, messing around in Green Lawn in Manhattan, as the core problem. The fear is retrospective. It focuses on their one moment of vulnerability.
Unprotected sex 3 weeks prior, which lasted all of 30 to 90 seconds.
And Peter confesses this chilling realization that's haunting him. When I sleep with someone, I'm sleeping with everyone he's ever had sex with.
That phrase, that single line, it just defines the shifting sexual politics of 1985. Sex ceased being a private act between two people.
Yeah, and instantly became this historical ledger of every single past encounter. And Peter, even though he was the one who initiated the unprotected risk of that 90-second encounter, he transfers all his fear, all his guilt, and all his blame onto Robin's past.
And Robin's defense is just. It's heartbreakingly thin. He says, I haven't been with anyone since I've been with you.
But it doesn't matter. Peter isn't listening to present fidelity. He's running from Robin's entire history. The irony is, he had this breakup fully planned. He only arrived in Philly long enough to drop his bag at a friend's place and then just dispose of Robin at the restaurant.
And Robin realizes he's not just been dumped, he's been traded for a safer, cleaner model. This guy Douglas, who Peter is positioning as the younger, trouble-free remake.
He recognizes the pattern. Peter wanted him for his exotic, turbulent past and his looks, but now that turbulence represents an existential risk.
And when Peter drives away, Robin has this violent, completely unexamined reaction. He's banging on the car roof, shoving Peter and Douglas. The irony is Peter's diagnosis of unexamined behavior is sometimes tragically accurate.
And this is where the dynamic shifts completely. Reeling from the rejection, Robin immediately turns to his roommate, George.
Who is the absolute structural foil to Peter?
Completely. George is shorter, he wears Malcolm X glasses, he's pre-med, he's grounded, and he's intensely focused on the present.
George is the anchor. He replaces Peter's detached intellectualism with this informed caution. When Robin brings up his crippling anxiety about the virus,
George doesn't dismiss the fear, but he reframes it. He tells Robin he can't make himself crazy about every penis that's been in your mouth. But then he provides the cold facts that ground the fear in reality.
He's so aware. He references the pamphlet, specifically one from a gay organization titled How to Have Sex in an Epidemic.
Right. He doesn't minimize the threat. He uses data to urge caution, saying, this thing has killed thousands of men who have sex with men, more than 4,000 in 1984 alone.
And this awareness comes from his own painful realization that he had to change his behavior. He came out as more homosexual than heterosexual and became celibate for a while after getting crabs from an early partner.
What's fascinating here is the immediate intimacy that follows the breakup. It's driven by adrenaline and this emotional need for comfort.
It culminates in a sexual encounter on the couch, but crucially, this is not a reckless relapse. This is a negotiated intimacy.
George is the adult in the room. He is the one who stops the action to establish explicit, conscious boundaries. He warns Robin.
Don't worry, I won't come. And if I get too pre-cummy, just stop.
And this contrasts so sharply with Robin's history, the 90 seconds with Peter, or that completely thoughtless encounter with Darren, the cruise ship dancer, where he admits he scrapped the condoms.
So the source material is showing us that Robin's new relationship isn't just about chemistry, it's being built on a foundation of explicit communication and self-preservation.
Yes. It requires Robin to consciously articulate his needs and limitations, which is something he has actively avoided his entire adult life. He is finally learning to examine his behavior, but through the lens of survival.
So that raw negotiated intimacy between George and Robin is immediately tested, right? Because they take this complicated new dynamic on the road.
Immediately. The morning after the breakup and the late-night encounter, Robin gets that distressed message from Ruby, and the spontaneous decision is made. They drive from Philadelphia to the Jersey Shore to find her.
And the car ride just quickly turns into a crucible that exposes these huge friction points rooted in their differences in race, class, and lived experience.
And the early AIDS backdrop still permeates their dialogue. It's this mix of genuine awareness with the era's toxic ignorance.
Right, because George, the pre-med student, he's relying on the facts from those grassroots pamphlets.
But we see how that information is often dismissed by others. Even Malik, the other waiter, when he's talking about a date, he casually dismisses the need to pack a condom because she's no freak.
That dangerous cultural assumption that disease only affects certain types of people, it just illustrates the uphill battle George faces in trying to live an examined, safe life.
And Robin, surrounded by George's world, where George's friends call him Blanco, is profoundly aware of his own inauthenticity.
He realizes he sounds like an actor miscast for his role when he tries to use George's urban language, struggling with terms like word or calling food dope.
His self-doubt is rooted in the realization that outside of his privileged green lawn bubble, his superficial traits, his blue eyes, his perceived innocence are his main currency. But that currency is rapidly devaluing under the scrutiny of the AIDS crisis.
And this friction is just exacerbated by the setting. I mean, the source reminds us of the profound social and racial context of West Philadelphia where they live.
Robin moved in only a week after the movie bombing, where police dropped explosives on a separatist black commune just 20 blocks away.
George reflexively locks the car doors for safety, which Robin used to just observe passively but now shares. And Robin feels compelled to prove his allegiance, recalling instances like being one of the few white faces at the Clark Park demonstration against police brutality.
And that need to prove himself and George's deep-seated anxiety just explode in South Jersey during the gas station incident.
George pulls his Cadillac into this abandoned-looking station. A stern, pale-faced woman approaches, scrutinizing the car and George, and asks pointedly what they're doing out this way.
And George glares, demanding clarification. Are you calling me boy?
She backs off, but the damage is done. Moments later, a police car just materializes and tails them for a mile before pulling alongside, staring them down, and then driving off.
George's fear is immediate and visceral. It turns quickly into pure rage. He shouts, "Are we in South Jersey or South Carolina?" He believes, with good reason, that the woman called the police purely because he was a black man in a nice car.
And here's where Robin's deeply ingrained, unexamined white privilege just surfaces so aggressively. He tries to dismiss the incident, viewing it as an overreaction.
And in doing so, he lashes out with a comment that's designed to minimize George's experience. "You're not Southern, George. You're not even that black."
Robin is operating under that liberal principle his parents taught him, that not to see color is a virtue, but he's using it here to deny George's reality. It's its own kind of racism, as the source notes.
And George's response is the emotional core of this entire section. It is a powerful, painful retort that forces Robin to confront the blindness of his own upbringing.
He explains this impossibly fine, dangerous line he is forced to walk every single day.
He says, "If I was any blacker, that cop would have pulled us over and made us empty the car. And if I was any less black, I'd get my ass whooped in West Philly living with a gay white boy like you."
He forces Robin to see that the suburb they both shared, Green Lawn, was not some colorblind utopia. George grew up in the distinct black part of Green Lawn, and that difference impacts everything, even the terms of their friendship.
It is a necessary confrontation. It's a painful step toward building a relationship based on mutual honesty rather than Robin's privileged evasion.
And the friendship survives because Robin finally accepts the need to apologize for talking shit.
And George uses the moment not just to vent, but to challenge Robin's core weakness, his tendency to revert to comfortable, damaged relationships. He warns Robin that if he quit his job, he would probably just go back to Pittsburgh and throw yourself at that hairy white boy, calling that choice a mistake.
So George demands that Robin be present and honest in this new, complicated dynamic.
And as that immediate tension settles, the deeper foundational family trauma surfaces. It reminds us what truly connects these siblings beyond their immediate crises.
Right, because this road trip is taking place on June 16th, which would have been Jackson Mackenzie's 18th birthday.
The loss of Jackson is the single defining fracture for the MacKenzie family unit. The source material reveals the circumstances of his death. This confusing scuffle on a playground slide that resulted in Jackson falling and sustaining a fatal head injury.
He was in a coma for months, whispered about in the high school halls as Coma Boy, before he died in December 1978.
And the aftermath was just toxic. The parents, Clark and Dorsey, announced their divorce the following summer. They couldn't sustain the marriage under the weight of the grief and the blame.
And Robin's own response was severe. He suffered a high fever for days after the funeral that nearly required hospitalization. The illness acted as a psychological eraser, blurring out these traumatic memories, including his violent fight with his cousin Larry on the roof right after the funeral.
And Robin ties this fragmentation to a specific geographical memory marker on their journey, the Toms River drawbridge.
He remembers stopping there as a child, watching the road literally split open, the two sides separating as the bridge mechanism lifted.
And he realizes now that this mechanical separation symbolized the permanent loss of his family's cohesiveness and, crucially, his own deep loss of wonder, of awe in the world.
And the source material highlights how this shared grief has evolved differently for the siblings versus the parents. Robin realizes that as years passed, Clark and Dorothy mythologized Jackson.
They turned him into an angel and a slugger who never disappointed them. But the siblings, they're struggling to reconcile that perfect image with the memory of their actual, bratty, real brother.
Okay, so while Robin and George are grappling with race and risk on the road, Ruby is undergoing her own profound personal reckoning down at the Jersey Shore.
She's in Seaside Heights, staying at Alice's rental house with her stable, if unexciting, college boyfriend, Calvin.
And Ruby's an outsider by design. I mean, her identity is expressed through her funereal fashion. The black dye, the Smith's t-shirt, a black miniskirt, these thick-soled black boots.
It's a stark, deliberate contrast to the neon swimwear, hedonistic, coked-up crowd around the keg. She's judging Alice's inner circle as snobbish and reckless.
And their social dialogue is chillingly revealing of the 1985 cultural climate. We get this horrific glimpse into the specific brand of intellectualized homophobia that was circulating in privileged circles around the Coke mirror.
Benjamin Dinkelberg, one of the Princeton students, offers this cruel, pseudo-intellectual analysis, asserting that AIDS is a cosmic cleansing mechanism.
He cites dangerous, often repeated misinformation, claiming the disease is the body rebelling against this invasion to the system. And he specifically references anal sex and the completely discredited Haiti connection.
It's just so important to state that these comments reflect the prevalent, toxic discourse of the time, framing the disease not as a biological threat, but as a moral punishment.
But Ruby, who lives with the real physical anxiety of her brother's exposure and knows about Donovan's lesions, she snaps back. She reframes the issue correctly. It's medical, not cosmic.
Her clarity is a defining moment. It shows her intellectual maturity amidst the party's moral degradation.
And she's desperate to escape Calvin, whom she finds stiff and boring, the exact opposite of the lover she fantasized about.
She craved a spontaneous affair. A word she noted contained the word air, suggesting something lighter, something to whisk her away from the heaviness of her life.
And her internal crisis is immediately and dramatically derailed by the sudden appearance of Christopher Cleary.
Chris is a figure from her past, a former long-distance crush from a Crossroads Catholic retreat weekend. They shared these deep, intimate confessional secrets over the phone.
Things like sniffing model glue, shoplifting, and her private nickname for her clitoris, her clint, a code for her sensitive secret self.
The reunion is so fraught because Chris is in the middle of a devastating personal crisis. He reveals he came to the shore with the explicit intention of committing suicide.
He planned to use Virginia Woolf's method, filling his pockets with rocks and walking into the ocean. He admits he was taking coke for courage.
The stakes just immediately skyrocket. He confesses he was desperately praying for a sign from God to stop him, and her unexpected presence in the room convinced him to wait.
And this instantly elevates Ruby from a girl seeking a casual encounter to an existential savior.
But this revelation traps her and forces her to protect the biggest lie she carries, her virginity. Dorian, Alice, Calvin, they all believe she's untouched, which Calvin uses as an excuse for their dead-end physical life.
And she perpetuates the lie to Chris, I'm not a sign, I'm not even a believer. because he needs her purity to validate his decision to live.
And then the source material unravels the painful truth of this lie. Her actual first time with Brandon Richards was brief, non-consensual, and followed by bleeding.
Her mother, Dorothy, confronted by the trauma, chose to impose a lie on Ruby. She said, if you don't want it to count, just forget it. It has to matter to you. You haven't lost anything.
And this parental advice, well, maybe intended to protect her daughter from shame, essentially created a permanent internalized lie that Ruby carries as this psychological baggage.
That psychological weight, combined with adrenaline and alcohol, propels her decision to follow Chris to a motel.
The scene is detailed and remarkably tender. It contrasts so sharply with the chaos outside. He carries her over the threshold. The kissing is elaborate and focused, a stark improvement over Calvin's stiff, perfunctory style. She feels genuine and desired.
But the shadow of risk is instantly reintroduced. When Chris finally puts on a condom, a Trojan ENZ, it doesn't go on easily.
And then, mid-thrust, Ruby feels the unmistakable slip. The condom comes off inside her.
Her panic is immediate and total. She recoils, retrieving what the source calls the dun-colored, wrinkled, slimy thing with her hands, confirming the catastrophe.
Her fear is bifurcated. Pregnancy and disease. Her mind races to calculate her cycle. She's due next week, and she immediately attempts this absurd, ritualistic form of self-care.
She pees instantly, hoping to pee out any potential sperm, and then she washes herself repeatedly.
The self-washing ritual is a perfect example of psychological denial and trauma response. It directly mirrors her mother's earlier advice to forget it. She's trying desperately to physically erase the trauma and the risk, to wash away the memory before it can settle and count.
The aftermath back at Alice's house is just chaos. The girls return, fueled by drink, and launch into this horrible, casual conversation about abortions and STD risk, projecting their own fears and shame onto Ruby.
Alice cruelly says she felt dirty after he fucked me, and demands Ruby get an abortion if she's pregnant from Chris. The environment is just toxic.
And the pressure culminates in this profound physical response. Ruby, already nauseous from the Bloody Mary, physically rejects the emotional and literal poison she subjected herself to.
She vomits a tomato red wash into the toilet. The source describes her body rejecting the pressure she has subjected it to, with everything old and ugly forcing its way out. This violent internal fracturing, this fissure moving up through her body, is the price of her recklessness. But it's also the physical manifestation of her shedding all those lies.
And the ultimate reprieve arrives later after she's returned to her family home in Greenlawn. While she's resting, she feels a sudden rush, thinking it's pregnancy panic.
But she realizes she started to bleed. Her period has come perfectly, joyously early, erasing that immediate visceral fear of pregnancy and providing this literal bodily sense of being cleansed of the risk. It's an almost miraculous, self-granted second chance.
So the emotional and physical journeys of both siblings, they finally converge at the Paramus Cemetery, at Jackson Mackenzie's grave. This is the place where all the accumulated trauma of the Mackenzie family has to finally be confronted.
And the setting is just so heavy with history. Jackson Leopold Mackenzie's granite stone has this simple, heartbreaking inscription. June 16, 1967, December 15, 1978, son, brother, slugger.
The cosmic unfairness is just amplified by the detail that December 15th, the day Jackson died, is Robin's birthday, marking him doubly with loss.
And that term slugger was their father Clark's sentimental contribution, a detail Dorothy always found contentious.
And Ruby doesn't pray at the grave. She kneels, she rakes stray leaves, and she recounts this horrific memory that sealed her rejection of faith 2 years earlier.
She witnessed the groundskeeper viciously bash a groundhog, or a mole, to death with a shovel, what she bitterly calls a game of whack-a-mole.
She connects this act of arbitrary cruelty directly to her trauma. Initially, she had tried to rationalize the mole's death as a sign from God, believing it meant Jackson's death was merciful, that it prevented prolonged suffering.
But now she concludes, no, it's not a sign. God doesn't care about sending me signs. It was just an example of cruelty.
And this moment of realization coincided exactly with the time of her non-consensual encounter with Brandon Richards. So the cemetery visit allows her to finally shed that protective religious framework she had tried to impose on her trauma.
And it is in this place of shared vulnerability that Robin finally manages to articulate the deepest, most paralyzing fear that's been generated by the AIDS crisis, a fear that's fueled his anxiety since the Peter breakup.
The emotional dam just breaks, and he confesses to Ruby, "I'm afraid if I get sick, you'll abandon me." He just cries, realizing that his fear of sickness is intertwined with the foundational MacKenzie trauma of abandonment after Jackson's death.
And Ruby offers this profound, silent validation. She looks up and sees Robin's hand intertwined with George's, just as they held tight when they were hiding from the police during the gas station scare.
And she doesn't judge the intimacy. She finds it perfectly normal and feels this genuine sense of relief, seeing it as a blessing that validates her own choice to pursue an unconventional, complicated love with Chris.
The siblings then face their parents back in Green Lawn, and the confrontation over Ruby's whereabouts and her conduct is so tense.
Clark focuses immediately on money and behavior, demanding to know what kind of example Ruby set by spending the night away. And Robin realizes both parents are just trapped in the slugger myth, elevating Jackson to this perfect being, which only highlights their frustration with their living, messy, complicated children.
But the most shocking revelation is Dorothy's secret intervention years ago, when Ruby finally reveals the truth about her traumatic first time with Brandon Richards and the sustained lie she maintained.
Dorothy admits she didn't just tell her to forget it. She secretly contacted Brandon's parents and his school, ensuring he was disciplined and kept away from Ruby.
It reveals this fierce, if complicated, maternal protection. Dorothy defends her prior advice. "I wanted you to lie. I wanted you to move on." She chose to prioritize her daughter's immediate emotional survival and reputation over her psychological honesty.
She wanted Ruby to create a clean slate, even if that slate was built on a lie. And the siblings realize their parents also operate in a world of secrets and protective falsehoods.
And we get this final, strained glimpse of Clark's attempt at evolution. He's dating a younger woman, Annie, and immersing himself in new technology, the fax machine, Xerox stock.
Robin sees him in his office, the room originally built for Jackson's potential long-term recovery, which Clark claimed after the divorce. Clark is attempting to modernize his thoughts, but his emotional progress is slow.
His parting advice to Robin, delivered amidst the discussion of Peter and George, is Clark's awkward attempt at acceptance.
He says, life is about expansion. You have to hold more and more in your head.
He's essentially telling Robin, "I am trying to expand my worldview to fit in a gay son, but I'm not there yet. Be patient." And Robin, recognizing how difficult this is for his father, accepts this strained effort as the limit of his father's immediate capacity.
And we learn the definitive paths for the two new relationships. Chris, having fled Seaside after Ruby left, is now back at his mother's. He lost his wallet, but found his resolve.
He calls Ruby, confirming his commitment to sobriety and treatment, revealing he is leaving the next morning for a rehab camp in a Midwestern state.
He confirms their mutual connection. "I fell in love with you all over again."
And Ruby makes the difficult, high-stakes decision to wait for him, believing in the authenticity of their connection forged through crisis and shared vulnerability. She rejects the superficial stability that Calvin represented.
And Robin and George solidify their status as well. George discloses the painful reaction of his own family when he came out.
His father mentioned the sin of disease, and his mother used that toxic love the sin or hate the sin line.
So George makes this powerful, clarifying declaration in response to that rejection. "That's not my home anymore."
And they commit to each other, choosing an immediate future together in West Philly, stabilizing Robin's job and defining their relationship on George's terms. Their new rules for sex aren't about passion, but about relationship building.
Right. Their sex must make our friendship better, acknowledging the profound emotional and physical risk they are consciously undertaking.
And this crucial stability is what allows Robin to make the final, brave choice. He accepts the London semester offer.
He leaves Green Lawn realizing he now has a temporary, complicated, but deeply honest home with George. A foundation built on shared risk, respect, and communication, which replaces the emotional chaos of his past.
What's so fascinating here is how the source material uses the early AIDS crisis not just as a medical threat, but as a profound moral catalyst. This intense June 1985 weekend, it acted as a pressure cooker.
It forced both Robin and Ruby to shed layers of inherited trauma, family secrets, and personal lies, all for the sake of survival and self-definition.
Exactly. The cost of maintaining those secrets, the slugger myth, Dorothy's protective intervention, Ruby's virginity lie, Peter's moral high ground, it just became existentially too high.
The chaos and the risk they endured ultimately demanded radical honesty.
And despite the staggering psychological and physical peril, the suicide attempt, the condom failure, the violence of the road rage incident, Both siblings achieved a new level of hard-won self-definition.
Robin embraced a love with George that's defined by communication and mutual responsibility.
And Ruby chose a path of difficult, hopeful commitment to Chris, a relationship based on shared brokenness rather than superficial perfection.
So if we synthesize this, the source material demonstrates that an invisible, life-threatening crisis really accelerates the timeline of personal maturity. For you, the listener, maybe consider this. How does the fear of an invisible existential threat, whether it's medical, environmental, or political force, radical honesty about love, sexuality, and commitment, stripping away the traditional, gradual processes of growing up and demanding immediate and potentially reckless self-definition?